Good evening and welcome to the Development Review Commission meeting. The Development Review Commission is created to hold public meetings and hearings to provide analysis and recommendations to the City Council regarding general land use policies and applications where the Commission has the power to recommend and to render final decisions on specified applications where the Commission has final decision-making power, including but not limited to all aspects of proposed and future development. The Development Review Commission recognizes that the creation of a desirable environment throughout the city for residents, business, and industry is a prime requisite for the interdependence of land values, aesthetics, and good site planning by promoting harmonious, safe, attractive, and compatible development that is therefore considered to be in the best interests of public health, safety, and general welfare. I'd like to introduce the members of the Commission with us tonight. To my left, we have Andrew Johnson, Phil Amorosi, Nick Labadie. To my right is Vice Chair David Lyon, Mike DiDomenico, Tom Brown, and I'm Chair Linda Spears. From staff, we have Cynthia Jarrett, Diana Kaminsky, Karen Scoval, Suparna Dasgupta, and to my left, Abunia Kingsley. The first item on our agenda is the consideration of meeting minutes for study session and regular meeting on December 12th. I have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Been moved by Commissioner DiDomenico and seconded by Commissioner Amorosi. All those in favor? Opposed, and that passes 6-0 with the members in attendance voting. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. The cases I'm going to read are all going to be considered without hearing unless there's someone from the audience who wants to speak on the case, and in that case, please get my attention. The first item on the consent agenda is the Discovery Business Campus parking structure. Anyone want to discuss that? The next is the item 4, Apache and Oak. Anyone wishing to hear that one? The next is Park Place, item number 5. The next case is Alliance Broadstone, Rio Salado. And the last item is item 8, the accessory dwelling unit code text amendment. Is there anyone here to discuss any of those cases? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
One point of clarification, do we need to read into the record the change or modification to the conditions of approval for the Park Place project that we discussed at pre-session?
I think we can include that in the motion, that approval of the consent agenda, including the items that were discussed. Is that?
We'll probably need to specifically mention what that one change, I think.
Okay, so why don't we vote on items 3, 4, 6, and 8, and then we'll do a second on item 5.
I second that motion.
Vice Chair, I assume that's. It's been moved by Vice Chair Lyon and seconded by Commissioner DiDomenico to approve the consent agenda consisting of items 3, 4, 6, and 8. All those in favor? Opposed? Is that an opposition? That motion passes 7-0. Now I'll take a motion on item 5, Park Place. Commissioner Lyon, or Vice Chair Lyon.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve Park Place PL 170166 as part of the consent agenda with the following stipulations. With the stipulations provided by city staff, say that the third condition read, applicant shall work with staff to provide masonry veneer selection with more variation.
Second. It's been moved by Vice Chair Lyon and seconded by Commissioner Brown for the approval of item 5 with the conditions of approval that have just been read. All those in favor? And that passes 7-0. The next item on the agenda then is item number 7, Farmer Townhomes.
Good evening, Commission. Diana Kaminsky, City of Tempe Senior Planner. The Farmer Townhome project is located on the northwest corner of Farmer Avenue and 7th Street, just north of downtown Tempe, north of University Drive. The map on the left shows you the zoning for the property as it currently is today. It's an R4 zoned property adjacent to a mixed-use development that runs along the east side of Farmer Avenue. The proposed development would include a planned area development for development standards to be established for a 15-unit attached single-family townhome product. In comparison, in the report that you have are some of the other developments within the area that talk to the height, the setbacks of adjacent R1 PAD products that have come into the area, and some contextual images that show the diversity of product within this particular area. The site plan configuration orients the buildings so they have front doors facing both 7th Street and Farmer Avenue. They're tucked in with a court garage scenario between the buildings. The shorter buildings on the west are 3 units attached, and then the ones on the east side are a 6-unit configuration. The alley collection is off of an existing alley that would be the refuse collection is off of the alley to the north, which would be improved for this project. They have an amenity area on the northwest side of the site that includes a turf area, barbecue, and additional bike parking for guests, if I can get that arrow to work. Let's see, is that this area right in here, with additional guest parking on site. Each unit has two car garages in standard configuration. They have a landscape buffer that runs along the west side of the property and street trees along both of the street frontages. They also worked with applicants on the east side of Farmer Avenue to assure that their plant palette was compatible with the rest of the Farmer Avenue landscape design. They have a front room that's like a little seating area adjacent to their front patio. And each additional floor area on the upper levels has a balcony. They had come to you in a study session, and one of the comments that they had received was related to the amount of outdoor personal space. So they did increase the size of those balconies on the upper floors to provide a more usable outdoor space on each of the floor levels. The elevations include a combination of choices for the garage doors, to provide some variation because these are an owner-occupied product. They have a masonry veneer that's used within the wrapped insets on the upper floors, and then different colors, shades of stucco facade on the rest of the building. I'll defer to the applicant for the details of the design. I just wanted to show you what the elevations would be. And I believe they have some additional renderings that would show this with the landscape context. So your views here are from the street corner, the intersection of 7th and Farmer, and the view along Farmer itself at the corner. And then a look into the interior courtyard and between the units looking down the main drive. We had one letter of support that came to the applicant that was provided with the initial report, and then we did receive a letter in opposition yesterday related to the orientation of the buildings, indicating they felt it was a suburban design and the concern that it was too automotive oriented. But the units do have front doors facing both streets. They have guest bike parking as well as guest parking on site. And it's really intended, it's not going to be a gated community, it's intended to be a permeable site that works within the existing community. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Do we have a materials board there you could pass?
A couple of the labels are falling off. So.
Thanks.
Diane, the front door color is a John Edwards 6371 black jack. Is it painted metal? Painted steel or?
No, I don't remember what the door is, a metal door? Metal
Are they flush steel doors?
We're offering a number of different options. They do all have a vision panel or some are full light
Is this out of sequence here? I'm sorry.
Questions of staff?
Perhaps, I'm
Are
sorry.
there more questions of staff? Okay, then the applicant can make their presentation. My turn.
Good evening, Chair Spears, Vice Chair Lyon, Commissioners, thank you so much. My name is Lindsay Shuby. I'm with the law firm of Gamage and Burnham. We do have a few other attorneys other than Manjula. Manjula normally is here with you all, but she can't be here, so you get me. We're at 2 North Central in Phoenix. I'm here on behalf of Desert Viking. They are the owner and the developer of the subject property. With me this evening to answer any questions you guys have are Caitlin Mulholland of Desert Viking and Robert Desrosiers with Form Third. He's the architect that was speaking from the seat, so we will get to the detailed questions about the options on doors and all that. But between all of us, and of course Rob Lane from Gamage and Burnham as well. So between all of us, hopefully we can answer any questions you guys have about this project. Desert Viking, they are based in Scottsdale. It's always a pleasure for me working all over the valley to work with local developers. I think local developers have a more vested interest in Phoenix and all our surrounding communities. They are a leading real estate development firm, and they recognize the investment in the restoration of historic properties and adaptive reuse. They've done a lot of projects all over the valley. They have a variety of experience, all facets of real estate. They've done some commercial, some retail, and quite a bit of residential. They have a solid, diversified portfolio here and do, again, have a real vested interest in the community and in the valley. They're renowned for their ability for developing projects that maintain characteristics that make each neighborhood unique and sought after. Desert Viking is passionate about weaving the community, the culture, the commerce, and the consciousness of real estate. They've done a lot of work in Chandler, some work in Gilbert, and you notice they all have a different look to them, a different feel. They all have a different individual sense of purpose to fit into their community. I just showed you work in Chandler where they've done a ton of work. This is a project down in Roosevelt Row. And then now they've entered into the single family. This is a single family detached project that they're doing in Gilbert, Arizona. So again, all of them have a distinct feel. They come into the community and really look around and try to fit into the existing character that's already there. What are we here for? As Diana mentioned, we are here for a zoning map amendment. We're rezoning the property, 3 parcels from R3, which is multifamily residential, to R1, so for a single family for sale project with a PAD overlay. The PAD overlay is to establish specific development standards that Diana touched on and we'll go through in greater detail, as well as a DPR for the landscape plans, the building elevations and materials, and doors, as we already kind of touched on. I think we're all familiar with where this is. It's a little over half an acre, 0.6 of an acre, located at the northwest corner of Farmer and 7th Street. Again, as touched upon by Diana, we did work with our neighbor across the street on the landscape palette to make sure that it was compatible. And Manj said I'm allowed to say on the record that Charles supports our project. This is a view of the existing site. I'm sure you all drove by it, but there's 2 underutilized single-family properties and a lot of vacant space right now. Again, as expected for a predominantly residential area, there's a lot of different mixed-use products in the area. I drove by it again today before the hearing, just again to get a feel of all the different options that there are in this part of town. You have 4 to 5 story developments, Encore on Farmer, the residences on Farmer immediately east across. You have the 6-story mixed-use development known as the Farmer Arts District. You've got the 3 and 4 story townhomes known as 421. And you also have the 3-story townhomes known as Broadstone at Hyde Park. Other developments, on the west side of Farmer Avenue are the 3-story Millstone townhomes and the 3-story Farmer townhomes. I almost feel silly taking you through what's around this site because I'm sure you all know it so well. What does this project look like, though? Why are we here? We've got 15 units. They are 3-story, which I think fits when you look around the variety of heights that we have in that area. Single-family attached homes. They all have 2 bedrooms with a flex space for home office, rec, or play area. All have a livable floor area of about 1,400 square feet. Private secure 2-car garage. Private entry on access on both ways, as Diana explained in her presentation, and exterior balconies on the second and third floor. And Robert, as the architect, will get into more of the detail of the architecture, but in response to the October study session that you guys had, we did increase those balcony areas, as well as make some other changes in response to comments from you guys that night. We have an open space turf area with an adjoining barbecue and seating area. That was, again, a change that was made in response to the October study session to program the courtyard, to have a better, better placemaking with the 16 units, 15 units that we have here. 11% of the building, it's 11% less building coverage than what's allowed by the current R3 zoning. And ample bike parking. In addition, and Diana touched on this, in addition to the internal loaded garage, we also do have enhanced pedestrian streetscape environment on both Farmer and on 7th Street. General plan. This project is consistent with the general plan, not only as a residential land use, but also up to the 25 units an acre. This is what was envisioned by your 2040 general plan. We also are in conformance with the character area plan. It's very detailed in the letter of explanation that we wrote. I'm sure you all read it. The project has really been reviewed in the context of the design guidelines that are in the Character Area 3 plan, the placemaking principles, and the different elements that were considered. And I know it's still under consideration, but it was important to us to make sure we adopted all those principles. 1, encouraging home ownership opportunities, a for-sale product, encouraging a development of a diverse range of housing types and sizes and styles, part of that Character Area 3 plan, and as well as supporting development that compatibly transitions within the existing context of the neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhood character. I'm now going to turn it over to Robert. He is going to detail kind of the site plan and the architecture, and we'll close and stand for any questions you guys have.
Thank you, Lindsay. Good evening, commissioners. As Lindsay discussed, the site's located within an urban environment that predominantly consists of a variety of mixed-use residential projects. Certainly, the project's building and landscape elements are designed, with context and area in mind. And that really starts with the site, as I think Lindsay touched on. We located it obviously on 7th Street and Farmer Avenue here. All the units, or majority of the units, are accessed directly from the street. And we have a slide that I'll show you coming up, which kind of zooms in a little bit closer to the entry court, the private entry court for each unit. So we start on the periphery of the site. We've got ample landscaping, trees, shade trees. That does reciprocate the same similar design that we have to the east of the property, and that continues around on Farmer. The site along Farmer is broken up. That facade is broken up with a vehicle entry access point, obviously right there. The site is also accessed by vehicles through the existing alley, which will be upgraded with new paving, and homeowners could either pull in to this internal drive to park internally on their garages, or they could also access garages for these 3 units directly from the alley. All residents, if they're walking to work, if they're coming here in the core, going to the store, they will have private access directly from the street on the units directly adjacent to the street. And again, I'll show you a little bit more. So here's a more enhanced rendering than what you had in the original submittal. Kind of a view right on the corner, 7th and Farmer here. These are the private entries that we're referring to here. I have a slightly enlarged view I'll show you in a moment. And Lindsay mentioned one of the things we did, some feedback we got from the study session we attended, was to activate some of the roof areas. We did that by actually increasing the balcony on the second level by 100%. It's twice as big as it was originally. And we also have a balcony on the third level. So we feel like the street on both Farmer and 7th are very active. Programmatically on the interior, we do have on the ground floor, so you have your entry sequence. We have a flex space, home office, rec area if you've got children. On the second level, the living space, the kitchen are all facing the street with that balcony. And on the third level, you have a bedroom space with a balcony directly above the street. As far as scale and the kind of massing, the breakdown of the massing, we've introduced, in addition to these programmatic elements I'm referring to, in response to some of the feedback we received, we did enlarge the entry doors and side lights at the ground level. We did enlarge the windows into the home office. We also enlarged on the second level and the third level the windows and introduced some shade canopies as well to further kind of break up the massing of the building.
Can I ask you a question on the private entries? Is that part of the fee simple? Or is that designed to be, it is? So it's not part of common area, that's part of the...
No, and here it is here actually. So here is what would be Farmer or 7th. It's the same on both streets. So this is a unit here, it'd be split down the middle, and here's a separate unit there. So you've got our landscape setback, trees. The trees are a little bit faded out here just so you can see the building, but there's the tree there, which is accurately placed. Then you would enter in a small low wall. We're proposing a brick wall here with a steel gate, and you have ample room at the front to have a cafe table or a couple of chairs. So it's really your front porch, and then you would enter, and you could see we've increased the amount of glazing at this area to really see inside the unit. And then this would be your home office here to the left for that unit. So that would be the window into the home office. And you can see directly above, these balconies now have been extended to be located directly over the porch, but also extend inward to just give you, a significant amount of space on the second floor. This is a view of the courtyard that Lindsay had mentioned. So this would be on the northwest area of the site. We're kind of pointing to it up there. So the objective here obviously is so the units that are internal to the site, so we're talking about how you're entering units along the street. These would be the entry sequences to the units internal to the site. So this building here is the building that you would drive in from the alley. You would pull in your garage directly from the alley, and your front door would be located off of this internal entry court, and that is true for this building directly to the south of that there. So similar design, you've got the private porches, and balconies. I look down onto this turfed area. We've got considerable amount of bike parking. I think we could actually accommodate more than what's in the drawing or in the matrix, the data matrix. I think we could fit about 16 bicycles over here. There's a mailbox, some guest parking. As I mentioned, the turf, and then this area in the foreground, it'll have a barbecue, a little patio, an area for people to congregate and have a barbecue outside. So we feel it's a very kind of important area internal to the site. Also, as Lindsay had mentioned, this is a very permeable site. It's not gated, and that's just...
Question from Commissioner Labate and then Vice Mayor.
So the view we're looking at here we'd be standing on the adjacent property to look in this way, is that right?
No, this would be, so what we have here, if I go quickly back to the plan, so there's actually a low wall right there, and that's where the patio and barbecue are, and then there's landscaping behind that, between a low wall, your barbecue, and the main site wall, the new integrated color site wall.
Okay, so that was
Just to
going
give it a
to
little bit of a buffer.
be my question.
Yeah.
In that view, it looked like maybe that site wall dipped right there, but there is an actual full-size site wall between this site and the property to the west all the way?
Yeah, so the main site wall that's demising the
Yeah.
properties, that's really out of view here.
Yeah, okay,
And that's, I believe it's 6 or 7 feet tall.
okay.
And then this guy that you see in the foreground, he's just a low wall to really kind of have the place for the built-in barbecue to be set and designate that area as a.
Got it. Full height site wall, landscaping, low wall.
Correct.
Thanks.
Exactly.
Vice Chair Lyon.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Commissioner,
just-
just a minute, Commissioner DiDomenico.
The site is impacted on 7th, and I'm assuming on Farmer also by utility lines, pretty significantly, I imagine. Is there any solution, and they seem with a 3-story building, these are going to be running kind of somewhere, I'm guessing they're crossing between the 2nd and 3rd story. Any solution to that?
Referring to overhead power lines.
Yeah, overhead power lines.
So typically, our experience working in Tempe, it's required to underground power lines that are part or in front of your property. And there's 2 ways, and this is really, the city of Tempe will dictate on how we do this. We either do that work as part of this project, or the developer pays into a fund that undergrounds power lines, because I think what that's designed to do is if you've got a long street of overhead power and you got a little site, it might not make sense to dip down and go right back up in a span of 50, 60, 100 feet. So that determination whether those are coming down has not officially been made by the city. That's something we'll go through in the next phase, but it's certainly our objective to have those out of the way.
If you go back to some of the site photos, and I walked the site, they're really low and sloppy looking. So I'd be interested if staff, maybe when you get a chance, could come back and tell us what happens, because these are going to be really right outside all these big expanded balconies now that you've just designed.
Yes.
This is a requirement of the engineering department, so they do look at each site on a case-by-case basis. I believe through our site plan review process in this case, the direction was that they would be undergrounded.
Go ahead.
I think we just had one final slide. If I'll touch on this, I've already touched on some of these areas. So based off of not only the neighborhood meeting we had back in October, but also feedback we received at the study session with you all, these were kind of some of the highlights. So addressing, quote, the dead roof areas, the underutilized roof areas, we did convert those into active balconies by increasing the balconies, particularly on the 2nd level. Increase window door sizes where possible. We certainly did that at the ground floor, as you've seen in some of the renderings, the 2nd floor and the 3rd level. So we did that substantially. Canopies, we did add some canopies over the 2-bedroom windows in the 3rd story just to help kind of add some additional interest on that 3rd story. Program the courtyard area to better represent placemaking. I think previous to this, it was a turf area with landscaping, but it did not include kind of the seating area, the barbecue area. So we did incorporate that into the design. And finally, continuing to evaluate incorporation of sustainable features. Certainly that's something that's important to us and the developer to provide a design that not only meets the energy standards today, but exceeds that. So those are things that we're continuing to evaluate from a budget perspective. Solar ready, rain harvesting, utilizing permeable pavers on site, things like that.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Robert. And we're both still here, but in closing, we're proposing to redevelop an underutilized infill property with high-quality, for-sale product, single-family homes, and much-needed diversity in the Tempe housing stock. We're consistent with the general plan as found by your staff. We're consistent with the character plan and the surrounding neighborhood when you look at all the different and the variety of projects that are either existing or proposed in the area. And with that, we've got Robert, we've got Caitlin, we've got Rob. We're happy to answer any questions you have.
Other questions? Commissioner Amorosi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that you made the balconies bigger, but I think what bothers me is for this being a downtown for sale product, Building B in the middle doesn't really get any views of downtown at all. Their views are the other building, whereas the other buildings at least get to see something out there. Building B is pretty much crammed in, and there's just not sold on that type of design. And I'm wondering, unless they were, more affordable units or what, but I can't see someone buying a townhome that doesn't have a view.
Through the chair, Commissioner, they will be priced differently according to the views. There may be people that really want to live in this complex and be part of this community who won't have the same view as some of the other units. I don't know, Robert, if you have anything to add in terms of the placement of Building B, but I think there's diversity in housing types in an area. There's diversity of housing types even in a residential community. Even in an apartment complex, in a for-rent complex. There are different, there's a penthouse and there's a studio. So yeah, I would agree with you that it's not the best building, but at the same time, they're going to be very beautiful units, and it's a jewel to live in Tempe and to have access to everything else that's going to be in that area.
Yeah, and maybe just to add, briefly, just to add to that, I mean, certainly I understand your point there. We certainly do our best to not only maximize yields, but create an environment for all units on the site that maximizes and is tied in with the internal surroundings of the complex. I think certainly we've done our best to introduce the courtyard, to have the kind of entry sequence. I think, if we did go back to that courtyard view, so they're certainly trying to give, because it is more internal, add an amenity space that you do walk through and enter your units on. I mean, the reality is, the site directly to the north of us or the site directly to the west of us in the future, could be developed as a larger project and inhibit other views, so we can't really, control that in the future.
Other comments, questions? Commissioner Brown and then Vice Chair Lyon.
Oh, the perspectives, the front doors. Yeah, that right there, kind of open up. I'm sure that
Yes, so what we're proposing, kind of working with Diana and the planning team, we're proposing to kind of offer some opportunity to customize the units, that the front door and the garage doors, you have an opportunity to choose between, I think it was 3 options. This would be an option. This would be kind of a full light door, so maximum glass. As far as your question, obscuring glass, that's something, frankly, that I would like to move away from. You could always add a film onto it, but what we would propose is to you could have a roller shade for privacy. The reality is, if we go to I believe it's part of this, really, just quickly. What we've done on the ground, we don't have a plan, unfortunately. I believe you have a floor plan in your packets, but you can see there's really nothing. There's not like a private space directly off of the entry court. So the foyer, you enter the unit. It's a foyer. It's got an entry closet. You can go into the garage. You could kind of go into your home office, which is out of plain view to where you would see another foyer, or you go upstairs. So there's really not a whole lot of. Yeah. So, hope I answered your question.
Yeah. So.
I would defer to the developer. Caitlin, thank you.
I don't think we're looking for a guarantee.
Oh, I understand.
Through the chair, vice chair, Commissioner, they're still evaluating what the market is going to dictate around 400,000. Is what they're looking at, but they're still evaluating.
Vice Chair Lyon.
I will comment quickly that I appreciate that degree of transparency without having a privacy issue. I think that's nice. My question had to do with the the driveway between Building B and Building C. Do you happen to know how wide that drive is? I gave another project a hard time for having too little drive space, so I feel like I need to be consistent and check.
Between B and C, so that would be for everyone, let's go back to that. Yeah, I think it's 24. It's actually larger than the minimum,
Okay.
believe it or not. So
Okay.
we're talking about that space. Also, you know, this
Wow,
space,
Tom,
and
you
you can
read
see
that?
it here, this space as well, so I think the minimum's 22 feet you can get away with now.
When you have backing distance, it's 23. If
23.
it's just a fire lane with no cars backing perpendicular, then it's 20.
Okay, so 23 is the minimum. We're providing 24 on this area. This area, which is, you know, a little bit, it's accessed by everybody, you can see we're providing more than, certainly significantly more than the minimum. I think this is closer to 30 feet between the two.
I think I'm reading 25.9 plus landscape for the wider
Right,
one.
right.
Does that sound right?
In here, yeah. And then I
Okay.
think we have an additional about 4 feet for the landscape.
Okay, good, thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Johnson.
I don't know if this is necessarily a question, but I'm a little bit confused that the aesthetic that you drew from the neighborhood led to this color scheme for these units. I find it kind of a little monotonous, kind of I hate to say boring, but just a little plain. And I see a lot of the other developments around there that have pops of color in some way or some fashion. And I'm just wondering if that was something, some other options were considered, or perhaps cladding in some way or something else that was considered that we might consider bringing back potentially?
Well, I mean, you know, certainly color is a subjective thing. I think the objective here was to kind of create a more neutral palette. I mean, but committing to something. I mean, we've got a significant amount of brick that's worked its way into at the entries. You know, second level, all through here is brick. Got some variation in the brick itself. And the palette, you know, it's not white. It's not. It's kind of a warmer palette, but it is definitely neutral and leans more on the contemporary side. We're trying to kind of thread the needle of, you know, contemporary, but still a little bit transitional, if you will, for if we, yeah. So, and that's just the path we chose, and instead of kind of introducing bolder colors or things like that.
Okay.
Other questions? Commissioner Brown.
One last comment. The railings are horizontal, and I know that's permitted under code, but we've seen in the past some concerns with people, young people, you mentioned the families, find those to be too easy to climb. So even if you want a horizontal look, perhaps some mesh or some other methodologies to make it less climbable for toddlers might be a safety issue. And that's purely a comment, not a personal concern.
Through the chair, vice chair, yes, we will definitely work on that. With a 7-year-old boy who climbs on everything, as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh, yeah, actually, he would find a way to climb. Yeah, so we will work with staff on that, absolutely.
Other comments? If not, then I'll open up the public hearing portion of the meeting. I have one individual who has requested to speak, Phil Yates. And if anyone else is in the audience that would like to speak, please fill out a card.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission, My name is Philip Yates, and I'm the president for the Riverside Neighborhood Association. And I had some questions as to the amount of parking for just people that want to come and visit. I think there were only 3 as far as I could see inside of the plan. And that simply is not enough. We still don't know how much these units are going to cost. I would like to see how much they are going to cost. This is definitely an area where affordable housing is needed. As far as the way that it looks, it is very bland, very blasé, it's very flat. I'd like to see more color, more depth to all of the buildings. The setback just is not enough for just looking at the actual plan itself. But that's all I had, really.
Okay, and just for clarification for your point, we can't consider price point when we make our decisions. We're
Right.
strictly looking at design, so
I understand that.
we can't do anything about your concerns about that. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak on this? If not, then we'll close the public hearing, and the applicant can address any additional comments.
Chair Spears, Vice Chair Lyon, I was going to say Vice Mayor Lyon, Vice Chair Lyon, Commissioners. As far as parking, we meet code, and I think Diana can attest to that. We've got the 2-car garages. There are 3 on-site parking spots, 3 on-street parking spots, as well as a lot of bicycle parking. Parking is another one of those that's very tough. Sometimes we're told we bring too much parking, sometimes there's not enough parking. We believe, Viking believes in their experience that this is the proper amount of parking for this site. They need to sell it, and we do meet the code. As far as color, yeah, Robert spoke to it already. Design is always subjective, and I had the pleasure of working on Shutterfly, and gosh, when that orange went up, people got all sorts of angry about that. So again, color is another kind of a tough one. I believe this is an architecturally pleasing building. It fits in very well with the surrounding area, and I think when the landscaping comes up and the residents come in, obviously that adds its own flavor and color too when you actually have people living there. Robert, do you have anything to add on the design? So I just addressed those 2 comments.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll open it up for commissioner comments. Commissioner DiDomenico.
Well, I have one more question. The roofs of the individual units, they're not accessible to the units, they're not activated?
Like the top level.
Yes.
The top level roof. It'll be accessible interior to the unit. For service, the mechanical units will be located up there, screened, not visible. It is not a roof deck.
But there'll be an interior roof hatch?
Correct.
From
each individual unit.
each individual unit.
And just to be clear, so the unit is kind of owned, it's like a 3-story stacked unit, right? No one else is living on top of you. So you kind of own your roof, and so your mechanical unit will be located up there, and for service, there'll be an access hatch on the interior of your unit to get.
And the top levels just have bedrooms?
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Any comments from commissioners? Vice Chair Lyon.
So I actually would weigh in on the sort of color and aesthetics thing, and my thought actually is a little bit on the opposite side. I actually would like it to be simpler and more elegant. So there again, subjectivity, even on our own commission. So.
Anyone else comments? Commissioner Brown?
I think the design has been greatly improved from the previous one. I rather like it. And at this point, I'm certainly in favor of approval. I do know we've talked before about the back-to-back parking, and I do see 24 feet, but on the right side, it's only 3 units deep, so I think you'll know who your neighbor is. If they have trouble backing into your dumpster, you'll get to know each other. So in this case, I think it's right on the edge of acceptable, unlike the unit that we perhaps did not approve a few weeks ago. So I'm rather pleased with the design, and I'll be voting in favor of it.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, I'd like to say that I really like the site layout, and I like the use of the alleyway for building A and for access through the development. I like the floor plans and the balconies. That extended balcony provides a lot of outdoor space. I like the street-facing units coming in. Access from the street, I think, opens it up to the rest of the neighborhood, which is nice. And just reiterate that I think it's a little bit bland. I'm all for elegance. I don't think that those squares really add. The color scheme doesn't add to the neighborhood in a creative way. I don't think, in my personal opinion. Understanding that aesthetics are per the individual. Thank you.
Commissioner Amorosi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to be on the record as saying it's not my cup of tea, but I appreciate that the developer did make improvements to the original design, and so I will defer and approve it. Hopefully somebody else does like it.
Any other comments? Vice Chair Lyon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to say I think it's a good project, and I want to be kind of on record that while this is an urban project, what I like about this, which I have not liked about other projects, is the circulation works for vehicles. The drives are sufficiently wide. There's a pull-through drive all the way to the alley, so there's some options on how vehicles can move through the space, and you're not going to be trapped in there. Most of the units, I think, will have nice views, and you know, they can't all have the best view in the world, but I think that there's been some real thought in that, and I think this is a nice functioning environment. I think there'll be nice units, so I will be supporting the project.
And I would just say I've actually had a unit in a similar complex where there is a row that faces the pool area only with no external view, and those are actually probably more desirable units than anything else. So yeah, because you know you've got more privacy and you're not dealing with people walking by your front door, and so anyway, I appreciate that you listened to our comments from the pre-session and took into account the increased balconies, and I personally like the private front yards, if you will, with the entryway. So good job. So if there are no other comments, I'll entertain a motion. Commissioner Labadie.
I move that we approve item 7, the Farmer Townhomes at 612 South Farmer Avenue.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Vice Chair Lyon. So it's been moved by Commissioner Labadie and seconded by Vice Chair Lyon. All those in favor? Opposed? That passes 7-0. Okay, the next item on our agenda is any announcements from commission members? Seeing none, staff?
Madam Chair, just to be on the record for January 23rd DRC meeting, we have a development plan review for two two-story office buildings for 20,000 square feet at Supima Agave. It's located on 1710 West Ranch Road. There is a request for a use permit standard to reduce the setback, as well as a development plan review for 5-unit attached single-story development for University Lofts at 800 West University. If you remember, that was one of the projects that came for a zoning reversion. It had used to have a PAD in the and then DRC and City Council acted on a reversion case, and it's coming back as a straight zoning case with, again, single-family residential attached. And then we also have a plan area development and development plan review for a 22-story hotel and a condominium in one. It's called the Hayden. It's on 580 South College Avenue. It's hotel with multifamily residential above it. And it's on 580 College Avenue. It's a PAD with a DPR. So those are the two options. This one is hotel with condos on top, above it.
All right, if there's nothing else, we're adjourned.